Sooner than that, they will show up. It's recorded as a job.
Okay, just so everyone knows, our meeting is being recorded, even though it's not our usual camera, we're improvising. I'd like to, yeah, so JP, sorry.
That's it, you're
I forgot.
taking off. So it is, we'll call it 6:08 on Monday, May 15th. This is Facilities Committee. Do quick introductions. We have our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Karina, in the house. For the last time, our Director of Facility and Operations, Ken Wood. Board members, Melanie Cunningham, and Keith Carrick. Superintendent, Dr. Al Roach, I'm your chairperson, JP Prego. We have in the audience, Peg Penpacker, one of our prestigious board members. So we will start the meeting with, look for the approval of the April 24th meeting minutes. Motion,
Second,
any discussion?
no,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. And I'll move to old business. First, the school safety and security services.
where are we at?
Dr. Roach. Doug, Andrea, if you have anything to throw out there, or
Recap on the last meeting, we.
Yeah.
The conversation took place at facilities, we provided the information to the board, we got some feedback from the public that was there. You said you were gonna bring it to this next meeting.
Yep.
We provided information on the website and shared that Friday update to our families that had questions in terms of the research that was utilized, as well as the trainings that were a part of that, as well as try to give a whole comprehensive look at not simply just one item on one budget line or the armed versus unarmed conversation, but all the areas of mental health, physical structures, and that was predicated by the presentation to the board at whatever the meeting was a couple meetings prior. So I think that's kind of where we are. We're bringing the information or bringing the conversation back here to see to give direction, see if the committee had any interest in making a recommendation for us to put on the June 15th meeting. I can give you an update on the RFP process. So we have gone through that process. There was 12 vendors that replied. And from various organizations, I guess they're all pieces to be approved. So we had a team that went through with a weighted rubric to give us a number of, based upon what they put in their training in terms of costs, in terms of all of the pieces that were asked in the RFP. And there was 4 that kind of rose above that. So there's 4 coming in for interviews to be interviewed this week as a part of choosing a new vendor, regardless of the decision that the committee makes or the board makes on the topic of armed and unarmed. We are looking for a vendor to supply security staff. So much like we would do for grass or for any other service, the decision of this conversation that's this week that will take a look at the vendors is not specific to the decision that the board makes. The board makes no decision, and we don't move in that direction, then we still need a vendor. As you know, with a normal RFP, which we just recently went through, let's say with our before and after school care.
Right.
So I just want to clarify that decision is not, that discussion on that is at the board level and not at the vendor level. They provided the numbers and the supports to meet the RFP. So those will take place later this week. And based upon the discussion here, as well as if it's at the table at June 15th, we'll have an identified vendor to be able to move forward with to prepare ourselves for the fall.
Is June 15th enough time? Hopefully,
More time is better, but that's the structure and the schedule that we're on.
okay,
We'll find out more when we interview them, as well as how quickly. Again, Mr. Kenwood can give you a better handle on the conversation that he's had prior to that. That it appears as if, and I'll use your words, the sourcing of arms seems to be a quicker turnaround than unarmed.
Right, we do want to give the chosen vendor enough time to source
right,
people for us, regardless of which model we choose.
okay,
So I would recommend you.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah, I figured it's gonna be soon. That's a lot of time, it takes a lot of time for Georgie even to find people.
yeah, sure.
Well, and I'm here too, if you want to ask me questions. I couldn't meet the last name, sorry, but I am here today.
You're here today.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I can say that, I had a draft of the rubric prepared prior to the last facilities committee meeting, with just some of the feedback we got. Sort of took that to heart and changed the weight a little bit of the different criteria, giving a little bit more weight to the training aspect and make sure that the guards are properly trained, not only over the 7, potentially 235 if they're armed, but other things like the escalation, and those types of training classes. So that was, we took that feedback to heart and changed the rubric, and that's what we used to.
To do the interviews. Okay, gotcha.
Good. Dr. Rhodes, what's the review process for the RFPs? Who's involved in the process?
Previous process or upcoming process? Upcoming process, there's 13 people on the district's side sitting at the table. So there's a number of administrators, Mr. Blake, Mr. Kurzweg, there's an elementary principal. We invited an assistant principal who could not make it. We have 2 members from UPEA. We have Mr. LaSalle and Mrs. Howard from the 4-5 Center. We have 2 students that are sitting in on the process as well. And I believe that's about the group. But it's 13 total. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. I'm sorry. And we have I want to say 2.5 because Mr. Brigo and Mrs. Hopkins will be there, and I have another board member that's going to come for the first 2 weekend.
Okay,
And
good.
Mr. Hipster, he has to be a part of the conversation.
Okay, great.
Again, we're going to be collecting feedback at this meeting of strengths of the firms, and then maybe areas of growth or concern from the firms, and then also make a recommendation based upon that.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
Sorry. Trying to remember all about that. But yeah, we have 4 members involved.
And just to recap, it is the recommendation of the administration to have armed guards in each building. One in high school, 1 in middle school, and 1 in each elementary.
Have we gotten
That's what we're-
any recommendation from UPEA?
Both Dr. Freeman and I have spoken directly with Mr. LaSalle, and I would say that I asked the question. I know there was a request for a statement written. I didn't get that, but I definitely got that the union is in support. Has no reservations in terms of the general reservations I think people have with the people, right, who is doing that, which is part of the vetting process. But Dr. Freeman, you talk to Mr. LaSalle as well.
Yeah, and so some of the conversation was around, and which is why we invited them to participate in RFPs, was around, what do they look like? Especially at the elementary level, and what is their professional development obligations? And so those were the 2 questions that they had, and that's why, we felt very much over the course of time, talking with them, being part of the RFP evaluations, those questions are embedded in that interview process. They had some other questions, but I would say, what are they gonna look like, and what does their training look like? Were 2 questions that, it looks a little different, for each vendor, so participate, and they want to do that. So,
Okay, does any members of the board have any, or member of the committee have any comments they'd like to make on the matter?
I'd just like to wait out and see. I know, I won't be involved this time, but I have been involved in other interviews of this type. And I feel confident that the process will yield out the right one. It's amazing, actually. When it's just amazing, even when you layer it all down and you get to the last few. It's amazing to me that every time it's a unanimous thing. It's amazing. I'm so surprised. Yeah, I'm so surprised every time. I don't think so.
Trust the process.
Yeah, trust the process. Yes.
So we plan on seeing a 10 to 15, not that we've requested this, but I am speaking with them, a 10 to 15 minute presentation of some sort. And then we have a list of scripted questions. And then if there's any specific questions based upon the proposals or discussion on the table, about 40 minutes set aside for each group.
Okay, great. Okay. I don't have any more stuff.
Keith?
No. This will be a good discussion for the full board once we get there,
Yes.
no matter what our recommendation is.
But I think at this point, we have to move forward with the recommendation.
Yes.
So, with that being said,
Does the, maybe get to comment?
sure,
I appreciate it, sorry.
go ahead.
The RFP, what is the time frame that the guards would be at school? Like, what is the time frame that they're there?
I would imagine when the kids are there.
And we have
Yeah.
specific times
Okay,
that are listed in there with your. Any school, a little.
it's been a while since I.
Yeah, I mean, each one would be, so I mean, I'm assuming like 15 minutes before arrival, 15 minutes after departure. Like,
I have it.
The polls.
That's right.
The rings.
Who's getting it? Who gets it?
I had hope that
I have it. You have it, or?
I do.
Okay, I have it.
He's stalling just to get the win.
No, no. Right here. Regular hours up for high school 7 to 3, middle school 7 to 3. Now, those are the regular hours. We listed it here. Because they listed it back to us. Reports.
You have it, though?
Yeah, no, I think you were reading it right.
I seem to remember it's them starting just before school, lasting just after, just.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
7 to 3, 7 to 3, and then 8:15 to 4:15. For the 4-5 Hereford and Marlboro,
okay,
And then we had a part-timer
12 and 6.
until 6 PM at the high school.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that was on our, my understanding. That was just some
Was
coverage.
that
It
extracurricular in mind?
was, yeah, it was thinking to close out kind of the 6 o'clock. That was just an additional guard in the high school, not an arm.
Okay.
At that point, that was at least a proposal that was there.
so I guess my question is, if we truly believe that this is the right decision, why do we not cover all activities? Because statistics, and I swear my page is torn poorly, but if you look at the statistics before school, the number of after school, do you mind? I approach, sorry.
Not just board members. Not just board members.
So you can see that there are a number still before school and after school.
And so I'm just wondering why, if we truly believe that this is the right decision, why do we not cover those other
And I
times?
am pretty good.
Yes, it was from,
The other written page.
yeah, no, it was from the times, if you look up school shooter statistics.
Because that is in contradiction with averting school violence, which is the Secret Service's documentation of active shooters.
Mhm,
They sometimes could occur at the time of school,
mhm,
which is part of the conversation about being there before arrival.
right,
You know, but statistically, if you look at completed acts of violence and or averted acts of violence, you will see they usually happen in the morning. And usually before lunch or at lunch, because it has to do with the profile essentially of school shooters, which is the longer the day goes on, the less likely they will to actually initiate an act of violence. And so that is from averting targeted violence, not to say that there haven't been
yeah,
sadly shootings. Usually the offender with, who is in school, a student. That, statistically, they have shown that it's actually in the morning.
right, oh, and that,
Yeah, it's
That's
usually
pretty
not
specific.
after school, and we also know that, at school events, we usually have some of our local entities and or state police also patrol.
okay, just
To
because
date.
that shows that still, the
Yeah.
after school totals. Like the early morning. So it's the same number, just different, broken out at different events. And so You know, if this is what we believe, then why wouldn't we include that for those? So I don't need an answer today. But I'm just planting that in your head. And then this one,
I think a lot of that is
Mhm.
practicality where we are
Mhm.
with having, when I got here as Mr. McFadden in the high school,
Mhm.
and now we've gotten some guards to help out with the traffic and all that, and it's stepping into it as opposed to what we've seen. You know, everyone looks at Springport and like, oh, they have 12 officers and they have 7 cars and
Yeah.
they're not even there 24/7, right? They're there most of the times and all that. So I think to answer your question, and part of it is really the practicality of stepping in and moving forward. And I know there's been questions like, are we trying to be PB? No, right now we're trying to make sure we, every day, every year, we take a step closer to continue to secure our buildings and secure our students and secure our staff and all of that. So I think,
Okay.
I think it was a realistic step to feel comfortable with knowing the response times and all the other issues and reasons behind it. I mean, if that's the wish to go that way, I mean, you know, there's a financial commitment as well as, you know, a bigger conversation.
And to that point, Alan, I would throw this on the pile, that we need to talk about and look at weapons detectors, clear backpacks. I'm reading more and more of more schools going to clear backpacks or no backpacks.
Yes.
I'm seeing that left and right across the country.
Yeah.
So I think that, like Alan said, this is just another step in moving towards doing everything we can.
But we have to talk about weekends, we have to talk about, I mean, anytime the buildings are open.
Yeah.
Because when the buildings, I mean, on the weekend, and there's someone renting it, it could be a free-for-all. It's a whole different conversation. I mean, are we ready for that conversation? I know there was also brought up about metal detectors. Well, when you have metal detectors, typically there's someone there armed and then something happens, so they're potentially already there as a part of, if not more than what's being suggested right now. So it would be practical in terms of a step in that conversation.
Yeah.
We're trying to be upper Perkins, not everyone else.
Oh, yeah, no, I
Yeah.
don't intend to be everybody else, but, you know, if that's what we believe that's gonna keep them safe, the kids safe, then, you know, to go with that, but, and also to Peg's point about the, metal detectors. One more hand, I'm a visual person, so I'm not gonna tell you what's on the other side until you look at it. The one side you can see is all of the shootings since 1970. And if you flip it over. This is my own research. These are the number of shooters at airports in the last 10 years. And they all obviously have metal detectors. They have other features, safety features. But that's all I could find. And there was one additional, but nobody was injured, so it didn't make the list because that was the number of people killed. But that was going back and going through newspaper articles, and there was only one that was actually in the airport. One was out in the hangar, one was out of baggage claim. So, you know, I think there's proof that some of the other tools can be used to help protect.
Airports now have one card.
Well, they do, but they're not at the front. You know, when you check your bags, they're not there.
Gotcha.
So they're inside. So yes, absolutely, they have armed guards, but just. I think that's the effect of, I'm making an assumption here, but I think that's part of the effect of metal detectors. They're right there, they can't get in. So I think that would support spending some money on those tools than
It'll be more like a TSA instead of a.
yeah. Event is, you know, clear backpacks, whatever the options. are.
Yeah, and I think, you know, weapons, they call them weapons detection systems now. And so I think part of the conversation of our, you know, internal administrative team was, I mean, when you look at instances like Uvalde, when you look at instances like Sandy Hook, you know, there were preventative measures, captured vestibules, the high-powered weaponry that was utilized, they shot through a window. They didn't,
Right.
you know, the perpetrator
Right,
didn't go
absolutely.
through the front
Yeah.
door. They didn't even attempt to go through the front door. You know, questions that we ask ourselves is, and I think it was asked even in a public forum, with a weapons detection system, what happens? Right? What happens is it notifies you that it has found a metal bladed object or potentially a weapon. So then what? Then what happens? They've penetrated the front, They've gone through the detection system and it's notified who?
Right,
Who did it notify?
it doesn't leave us.
I mean, it may notify a security person. So, you know, and so it may notify us, and it's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that. The question is, then what? You know, what we've seen is that the pathway to violence, once a perpetrator has determined that they're gonna do that, I suspect that they're not gonna stop for the beat, and they're not gonna stop under the redirection of an SRO. Likely what will happen is that they will kill the first people that encounter them, which is usually when you look at incidences, it's usually an administrator or the people instead. I mean, that's true, you know, and I'm not saying that those aren't bad things. It could notify us. The question that we ask is,
Where does it go from there?
what happens then, right? Somebody has to engage that person to conduct a search to discover what it is that has alarmed. And so, which, if that person maybe was on the fence about committing an act of violence, or maybe forgot it, certainly then we could prevent those from being in the building. You know, typically a perpetrator, and in some instances like Uvalde, they are not students. They are people off the street. Sandy Hook was a former student. And so, you know, Platte Canyon was an adult man. So these are people who are coming in the ebb and flow of students anyway. And sadly, you know, that's why the notion of a comprehensive posture around safety and security. Yes, I think that all of those things are critical. The two things that you find is that, you know, 91% of averted and completed acts of violence were caused by stressors, crises of students. So mental health, without question. I mean, we have poured, you know, efforts, 500 additional $1,000 next year around mental health. The question is for us, and that we came back to, and what I say is, I wish I didn't have to say, you know, it comes back to what we know. Attacks usually are complete within 5 minutes. And 85% of the casualties are people inside that building. And so, you know, how do we, what is our recommendation for the preservation of life? I mean, as a building principal, I can tell you, I'm not trained, and 10 years, I was not trained to take down an armed assassin. I just wasn't. I would try. I likely would not have gone home that night. And so, you know, that's in addition to everything else. This was one recommendation around a whole host, including, you know, what is our consideration of weapons detection? I will tell you, one of the easiest solutions to help is just lock your doors and don't prop them. You know, and like you read that when you're reading about these types of events, unfortunately, it's sometimes those mistakes that lead to the highest casualties,
Well,
which is sad.
I guess when I think of weapons detection, if you detect it in the very beginning, they don't sit there with it all day and go to the lunchroom.
I don't think
It's a
we're
good
even,
question.
it doesn't even, it's not just people from the inside in, it's people from the outside in.
Correct, right, but what I'm saying, so a student brings a weapon in and, you know, it's not stopped at the front door. They have it all day, they go to the cafeteria. They
Yeah,
got a ton of people.
yeah, I mean,
And so if we stop, my point, I guess, is that if we stop them, you know, at the front, then we've averted, you know, I mean, something may still happen in the beginning, but
Sure.
you don't give them free reign all day to pick and choose
Yeah,
what
I
they
think the
want to do.
operational question is, once it's detected, do you expect that they're going to passively consent to a search
Say, oh,
and
yeah,
hand it
you're-
over? I mean, those are questions, we don't have that answer, right? I mean,
Right.
those are situational questions, but,
Right.
you know, I think the concern would be. I mean, I'm not against weapons detection systems, you know, I think it's a whole host of protective recommendations to, you know, minimize, and I use the word minimize because I don't ever want to use the word prevent, because I don't know if that's realistic. You know, so what does that look like? What does that encounter look like, and who is making that contact? And who furthermore would we as a board and as an administration feel comfortable taking a weapon off a student? I don't, you know,
Well,
I don't know what that looks like, but that would also be in the flow of all the students going through the weapons detection
Absolutely,
system.
yeah.
So,
Right.
you know, it's,
It's not gonna be a single file, one person at a time, not when school starts. at
No, but
fast.
a lot of schools do it, and I think Peg brought up the point of, different ways that we can do it.
So, yeah, we have to look at those things,
Absolutely.
But for me personally, I worry about the shooter that shoots out windows and doors.
Oh, my God.
And
When I used to work at Hereford,
Yeah, 4 years ago, I asked,
scary.
4 years ago, I asked that question about the new middle school. Are those windows in the front of the school bulletproof?
Yeah.
That's exactly what I thought
Mhm.
about.
Yeah.
And for me, I can't speak to these other board members, but for me, it comes down to two words: response time has me scared.
Leaning onto the web.
Thank you.
Thank you. It sounds like it would be something where the students just walk through it and like my pager goes off, hey, there was a weapon detected. I have a security guard right there. You know,
yeah, I mean, I would imagine that there would you have to be multiple.
and then as far as the glass issue goes, I'm a glazer by trade. I installed the automatic doors at the middle school when it was under construction, as well as other doors in high school. What about bullet resistant film? I mean, there's stuff down there that stops up to a 3006, and it goes on as complete as that, right? I mean, literally, I mean,
We've done some of that.
yeah, I mean, the cost of actual glass versus a film that could be done.
Yep.
Over the summer.
We've been talking about it,
Yeah,
we talked about that for years.
Yeah, part of our
Yeah.
last year's grant a year and a half ago
I was
was.
trying to say all the things.
Even better than
Yeah.
literally, you could stand it up there and get magazine in the glass, you'll never get through it.
And I think. Sorry, I didn't mean.
That is,
I think there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle, and we're just trying. to Put as many as we can in it. Nobody has solved this yet, right?
right,
Nobody knows
Yeah.
what's gonna stop it, what's gonna prevent it. There's all, you know,
but I mean, with security in the school, filming the windows. We've seen recently, the most of them have been people coming into the building. If you can make sure that the doors are locked. And you can make sure they can't get through the glass. When somebody's sitting there blasting away at your glass, it gives that SRO that much time to get to where they're at. And it keeps them out while the rest of the community comes in and takes care of them.
Anything we can extend the time when an act is initiated to when they make contact with the people inside. Is certainly, and that's why I said, like, there was nothing that I would say isn't worth it to save human life. We're looking to extend and allow the people inside the building to respond. Plus, I mean, we're dealing with multiple police entities. And the way that looks for us operationally can be different depending on the day.
Oh, I'm here. for
Um,
you guys. I'll-
and so, That, I think that those are the things that we think about, knowing what we know and attending the trainings that we train. And knowing we want everyone to go home. How do we posture ourselves to make that possible?
Well,
and I think. Go ahead, Keith.
one of the big things is, I mean, it is a multifaceted problem here. There are so many things that we have done, so many things that we still have yet to do. But the end result is, if one child gets hurt, even if a person breached a school and the child got hurt tripping, there'd be hell to pay. No matter how bad the injury is, and God forbid there be another death in a school. It's the worst thing that can ever happen. And that's one of the biggest things I worry about. So, personally, I see us doing a combination of efforts here. As much as we can. For all the schools involved, because I don't want to be the person sitting on the board and have something happen. And hear, or, not do something. And hear that something happens and a child is injured. It's the worst thing ever.
So I think, as far as I'm concerned, I think you guys are pretty transparent with it, because I get emails and everything, I follow them and say, hey, there was something that happened, it was taken care of, there was nobody, the most transparent school district I've ever dealt with.
Thank you.
We just, my oldest kid is almost 27 years old, and, you know, we've been here for just a couple of years, but everyone before, you never heard of this kind of stuff. There's always, you know, somebody got beat up or this and that, and you guys are like, hey, something happened, but nothing came of it, but we just want to let you know that we're taking care of it. All right, cool.
It's called being proactive. It's a concept that we really enjoy here. Proactive and transparent. Thank you. And thank you for pointing it out. That's very important.
I mean, for me, it's, you know, and I haven't said this before, I have a background in engineering. And one of the things I remember when we were taught was, you know, the Swiss cheese graph of, you can put all these preventative measures in place, but if each one has a little hole, something can line up, work its way through. You got a plan for what happens at the end if something makes it completely through. And I don't think we're looking at this as a prevention technique. It's what you said, Andrew, it's a mitigation, it's to help the response time. It's the end thing. It's the thing that none of us want to talk about, it's none of us want to think about. But it's the world we live in right now. It's the realistic possibility, as sad as that is. And if you don't prepare for what could happen, you know, that's on your conscience, that's on you. And you know, I never thought I would see myself in a position or having to think about this or having to make a decision on it to the point of supporting it. But the more and more that I look at it, that I view it, it has to be done. And that's my opinion on the matter.
Everybody thinks it can't be us, so it is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I don't want to be caught unprepared. It's
Yeah, it's
as sad as it is to sound, you know, it's the truth of the matter. So anybody else in the audience make a comment? Okay. With that being said,
Technically, you don't know. I just want to clarify, technically, we don't need to have this board approved as a part of the personnel and the budget.
Right.
But I think as we're saying, transparency, I think it makes most sense with a big move like this. Again, if we were adding film to this history, we wouldn't ask for board approval, that type of thing, but in transparency and in conversations, we wanted to have the conversation larger. So we were asking for a recommendation, our recommendation, and for you, either the directive or putting something on the agenda which confirms that this is the direction that we're headed. That way it's there, it's approved, and then we'll move forward with that process.
So you're looking for a motion?
Looking for a motion, we're looking for something to come out of whatever, looking for a motion to come out of committee. We put on the June 15th agenda for the board to consider conversation and then ultimately vote on it.
Okay, I'll make that recommendation. I'll make that motion.
I'll second that. And the motion is going to be that the board act upon the recommendation that is delivered by the committee who's doing the evaluation of the RFPs.
And they're two separate, right? So the recommendation is the 5 armed and then the other unarmed at the middle school and high school and full complement. We can put the language together in such a way while Kyle kind of wordsmith it, so it's appropriate for the June 15th agenda.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Are you agreeing to it?
let's say any discussion on that, are you guys good?
Not
Take
yet.
a vote on it,
Yes.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, thank you.
Coming out of the base.
Coming out
Yes.
of the committee.
Yeah.
So, thank you, everybody, for your time on this.
Yep.
Thank you for your participation.
Yes,
Alan,
absolutely.
Andrea, and Doug, this is, like I said, it's not something that anybody here takes lightly. We want to think about, but it's something that's a responsibility that we have to this community, so.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
On to more exciting topics.
Yeah, let's talk about a inspection.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
So a few weeks back, we had the second conservation district inspection of the new middle school site, including basically everything covered by the MPDES permit, which is, believe it or not, all the way to Walt Road and all the way down Montgomery Avenue to Sixth Street.
6th Street.
Yeah, 6th Street. I was under the impression mistakenly that the second inspection would be confirmation that the deficiencies from the first inspection were remedied. Fairly quickly, we found out that that was not the case. They were basically starting over and were going to inspect the entire property. Many of the deficiencies that were originally, the first denial of termination notice that we received from the Conservation District were remedied to their satisfaction, but of course they found other things.
Moving target.
It truly is. There were 3 representatives from the Conservation District that attended with prints in hand, and we walked the majority of the property, including all the way down Montgomery Avenue. There were a few issues with there was a pile of cinders that were in a stormwater management structure closer to Walk Road that he pointed out, one of the individuals from the Conservation District pointed out. We've already remedied that, taken a picture, sent that back to them. We have not received a report back.
I was gonna say that they.
The second,
does,
no,
yeah.
not yet. He was going on vacation
Of course.
after he met with us, so we're still waiting. There was an inlet to the rear of the middle school that had some erosion around it. The water was basically getting into the inlet, not through the top grate, but through a sort of breached gasket around the cap of the inlet. We've since removed that cap, fixed the gasket, compacted the soil around, seeded, and we've sent that on. Hoping that at least those 2 items don't make the.
So you're trying to jump on what they were.
Yeah, exactly.
During exactly.
There was a medium-sized area to the rear of the middle school, in between the bus loop and the sports field, that we haven't gotten 70% grass stand there, and they were sure to point that out.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
did not pass.
Did not pass the.
They didn't have a little loop in hand, but you could. So I have a quote from a local landscaper actually to come in and aerate that area and slit seed and fertilize and compost. So I'll fund that out of this year's, operating budget. So I'd like to get moving on that. And then we had some dead trees, I guess, next to the bus loop, some trees in the, and I don't understand this part, but there's that slice of Montgomery County property in between the middle school and Mr. Chrisman's property. Well, there were some dead trees in there that apparently are our responsibility as well.
Surprise.
And then there were some issues with some of the stormwater BMP going down Montgomery Avenue towards 6th Street. So we're trying to jump on these things and get them, remedied as quickly as we can. After talking to Dr. Farina and having her experience one of these for the first time, my recommendation would be for us to get out of the stormwater BMP maintenance business.
Yeah.
It's just. I'm kind of at a loss for words. We're a school district, our people do a good job with taking care of the property of the schools and cleaning and maintenance, but when we're not a public works department. We don't have the ability to work in the street safely.
Right.
We don't have, short of hiring a flagger and things like that, we don't have that.
So
It's sent Alan out there with the best.
Yeah.
I've been on the track in a while.
So is this something we need to wrap our head over about?
Well, we actually, Mr. Mazika was able to find a company that does BMP maintenance.
Oh, I thought maybe we could.
So I've since sent them the O&M plans for them to look at and just give us a feel for whether or not they can, help us and how often that maintenance has to occur and what the cost of that.
How many
would be.
millions?
So we still be responsible for it, but it's just, we're.
We would outsource it.
Right.
Exactly, sub it out.
Are most of these areas along street venues, or as you said, the strip of trees that are Montgomery County between the Christmas property and middle school? Are some of them hidden like that?
Yeah, well,
Inaccessible?
that's a good question. Mr. Mazika actually did some additional research and he came back to me a day or two ago. and said that he doesn't believe. Some of the trees were planted because we needed credits or, and I don't completely understand this, but he came back and said that he doesn't believe that we need to replace those trees. So he, you know, he already sent that on to Conservation District and they're gonna have to agree with his logic for us to, you know, have that requirement waived.
So at this point, we're in a holding pattern for, again, until we complete at least what we think we need to do, until we get the official
Right.
report from them.
Right.
Then if there's any surprises on there that they made the mention to a walkthrough or something, or to tackle that. And then bring them back. Yeah.
Well, I had asked if we could just send photos of, you know, each of the deficiencies and showing sort of before and after. And I think initially he said, yeah, that would work, but then he said, no, he's gonna have to come back out for another inspection.
Geez,
So,
DEP and EPA aren't even that ridiculous.
no, it's,
I
the
have-
problem is, and this is the first, is, you know, we're out to bid right now for the softball field
Right.
drainage project. The bids are due this week, on
Okay.
Wednesday. I just don't,
Yeah, where do you
I
go
don't
with
think
that?
the permit is gonna be terminated in time.
I don't
We
think
were
so
thinking
either.
the fall for the softball.
Right, essentially, you have
Over
to
the
get
summer.
started after 4th of July or even in, you know, in August. We don't think it's gonna take more than 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. And then plant, you know, restore the site in September. You don't wanna be, you know, planting sod in the heat of the summer. or anything.
No,
The problem is I can't with any certainty tell you when they're gonna get.
Yeah.
do we, is there any way we can address the worst part of it without disturbing an acre? And with the necessity for that?
We're already actually under the problem is if we didn't have this, we don't have to apply for a second permit. That's not the case.
Okay.
I thought that
I
too.
thought that too, okay.
The problem is because we have this existing permit, if we don't get that terminated first, then it's a major amendment to that permit. If
And then it would be tied to that to have.
Yes, it would be tied to that.
It's gonna be that for the next 5 years.
If we do get it terminated, then we can do the softball project without a
Without the
second
end.
permit.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, that-
because
that's
it's under an
helpful at
acre
least.
of disturbance.
That's at least helpful.
Yeah,
But if you
I was
don't get it-
confused with that initially too. I thought it was 2 permits.
But if you don't get it terminated, would it be feasible to go ahead and make the amendment and run them both simultaneously? Would you then be able to get the amendment and do the field work?
Yeah, but how long would it take to get an amendment approved? Probably just as long as.
And then how many
it-
approvals were to
Yeah.
go through?
Yeah.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can, it's the same thing, you know, whether it would help expedite things or not, yes.
So,
I can certainly ask the question.
Yeah.
but I think we're gonna
Yeah.
be unpleasantly.
because am I correct that the sidewalk project was a separate project? Just for that reason? Because nobody wanted to spend the time to amend the MPDS permit, but then Upper Hanover said, yeah, you have to have sidewalks. And
You know, I thought it was, that sidewalk project was a major amendment to the permit. That's what I thought, maybe
I
not.
don't think so.
It's all very. confusing.
It's all very
I gotta be
confusing.
honest with you.
I know, and now it's been 6 years.
So that, you know, that's the problem and I believe the bids are due are good for 60 days. But then the contractors need time to procure the materials, which I don't think is terrible in this case. We talked to some of them at the pre-bid. But if this lags into July, on that whole. I mean, this year window, this window, the window's closed at that point.
Well, the only thing we do is pray that things fall into place and we start getting the approvals.
Right.
Yeah, you know, we're gonna keep working at the list. It's just. and keep
We need the
feeding
official
them.
list first.
Right,
Right.
and keep feeding it out. Hopefully what we get from them is minimal, because we've been fixing a lot of the way.
Yeah.
Which we appreciate.
Yeah,
But,
we sure do. Yeah, that's an awful situation. That's a horrible situation.
So in terms of moving forward with the seeding and fertilizing and aerating, we're okay with.
Yeah.
proceeding with that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Do you need us to do a rain dance or
Yeah, well,
something like that? I'm
no,
Wouldn't be
have
first
a
time.
water wheel.
Yeah, right.
and just so you're aware, in the event that, you know, all the stars align, in the bid, there is an alternate. For a walkway from the Walt Road parking lot. To meet up with the walkway that's
Oh,
coming
nice.
from the middle school.
Okay, that would be helpful.
Yeah,
Because I
however,
would prefer
there's
to
a-
do that.
there's always a but, it's not a, it has to be a pervious surface.
Okay,
If we were to go impervious, then it would have
so it
tipped the
needs to be
scale.
stone pathway or,
So essentially, I can pass this
Oh.
around, it's a rigid plastic
okay,
that makes, and essentially there'll be grass growing up through it. But it's pervious, it will satisfy the conservation district, but it'll make traversing that area a little less treacherous.
Yeah. yeah,
That's cool. Having been to a couple softball games, and this is, you know, there's a lot of people that park at the middle school now.
yeah,
But we also have a lot of athletes that are going back and forth between the schools. So it's just gonna have to be.
They can handle the wear and tear of that.
I think, yeah, that, there was another option that was a flexible plastic, and I just thought that would not hold up under, you know. They were walking off of that.
cleats and all.
So that would help with Lawrence Fest, people that can park over, but they could, we only need it's definitely.
Right.
Be bonuses to the campus.
Yes,
So
A
that'll,
lot of what comes over for.
yep,
for
to the middle school.
Middle
We
school.
run those shuttle golf carts.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a big shuttle.
so that'll be a decision that the committee will have to make on that alternate. I don't even think I got from the engineer what an order of magnitude, that's why we made it an alternate, we're not sure how much that's gonna cost.
Okay,
So
all right.
you'll have the. What it looks like and what its purpose is, and then you'll have the amount.
Gotcha.
And you can make that decision. Yeah, I've talked to some other schools that have gone through this and the constant answer, the consistent answer I get is years, which it's already been years for us, but you know, we had COVID and different things.
Yeah.
Elongated our process.
Okay.
All right, so we talked about the softball drainage, anything else on the stormwater or was just?
No, I'm
trying to get us a bit.
I'm just waiting for that company to get back to us,
Okay.
whether or not they can help us, you know, and how much that would be.
Okay.
I believe they've actually reached out to the township's engineer too, and they're waiting for a return from them before they get back to us.
Okay, all right. Note to self.
And then back to the high school track, so I think we left off with trying to have it open for certain hours.
Right, so I just want to confirm that, you know, we were gonna do 8 to 11 or something along those lines for the summer.
I think we gotta start somewhere.
With, you know, with the appropriate signage and just sort of see how it goes.
You think 3 days a week, Doug, or
I think we we're saying the 4 days that the staff was in.
the Monday to Thursday?
Monday.
And you're gonna do signage.
Yeah, Mr. Kurzweig said that there is signage there already. I just needed to look at that with him and see if that's, you know, we think that's sufficient or if we need to
Probably need to
change the language or supplement that.
I think we need big letters.
7 morning. Morning, 8 to 11, but
8 to 8
Yeah.
to 11 a.m.
We need bigger letters.
Monday to Thursday.
Bigger letters, and so those of us who can see.
Trying to print us visually challenged.
Okay.
Wonderful.
And that's for use of the track. Not for use of the equipment.
And so, you know, there were 4 of the corner lane barriers. They were behind that pole barn, but now they're gone. So at the corners, there's a receptacle to put those lane barriers in to keep people from the 3 middle lanes off those lanes, to force people to walk on the outside lanes.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's worth trying to find those and
Right.
installing them, maybe
Yeah, when I
pass that one off to Craig, I don't know.
when I was doing the research, there were some signs that I came across that specifically said what lanes
Yeah,
you should be using, like only use lanes 5 and 6. I
Yeah.
don't know if we wanted to go that.
But those barriers are.
Regular or we just?
I don't know.
I don't know how you- I don't know how you-
Yeah.
Yeah. About five.
Let's just go look and see what happens.
It's true.
Children with too much wear and tear.
So we should put it back on old business and just keep an eye on it.
Right.
But without changing the guard.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see what it looks like.
So, just, so should we think we
For what?
start this,
Oh,
Yeah,
June 12th?
it's 12.
Yeah.
okay.
Then does it stop when school starts or does it stop when?
I fall
Athletics
sport,
Yeah.
fall sports start,
Yeah, summer.
so August.
15, I think my heat activation is.
Is that first?
Early, yeah, it's like the first week of August.
So June 7th, it's probably June 14th is when all sports come back.
Yeah, so it's that week prior.
August.
August
14th.
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
gotcha.
Does the band use it for practice that early or not?
I don't believe so. And mostly in the parking lot.
I think that's-
On the outside.
So we'll say tentatively August
So that
14th.
day would be August.
Confirm when.
Okay,
August 10th, yeah, that's the last of the 40 week.
okay.
Excellent. Speaking of changing of the guard.
Yeah.
Under new business, we have, welcoming Craig Howard, he will be the new director of facility operations. We had the chance to meet with him and chat. Couple minutes on Thursday, He's very enthusiastic,
If all goes well paperwork wise, he'll be starting Friday.
Yay,
We're
Great.
just waiting on some paperwork.
great crossover time.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Excellent. All right,
so we're happy to have.
yes, we are.
And he goes on speed dial, right?
Yeah.
If he doesn't, I can.
Yeah, we've already.
That's right.
We've exchanged now.
He's gonna change his cell phone number when we leave.
Yeah, told them.
All right, so we'll move on to something not so happy, I guess, here. The letter from Barry Islet.
So back to the middle school, good work, family. So you recall when we had the project to stabilize the detention basin, once the basin was deep watered, we discovered all sorts of irregularities that were not reflected on the as-built drawings as provided by the site contractor. That, ground the project to a halt for a number of weeks, generated a fairly large change order from David.
Yep.
He was working on the project, and Jim Mazika and his team incurred
Countless hours.
countless hours and multiple surveys and engineering analysis, et cetera, to, to remedy and shepherd us through that issue. They were invoicing me during that period, and I was holding the invoices, and essentially I went back to them, I said, I can't request additional fees. The school board approved your proposal up to a certain dollar amount, I just can't pay you beyond that without a formal request. Because as you can see, it took them a long time to get me the formal request, and it came in early May, and that's the letter that I.
Did they bill us for the preparation of the formal request? too? Probably.
Yes. Oh, circular.
It's all cost, yeah, exactly.
So I do have one question on this, though.
Mhm.
You said they were invoicing you during the project when they were doing it. or something.
Yes,
So are we gonna get this 1.5% per month fee? For the invoices that weren't paid in 30 days?
I dare them.
I will make sure that that is taken care of, but I'll definitely take it over.
Yeah, what you did, get them free.
Definitely discount period, yeah. That's-
So, I know it's a lot of money, but they did expend or expend the effort and the time. And I know they produced a number, they had to do multiple surveys. Update the as-bills and O&M plans. My recommendation would be absent any finance charges.
I would recommend we permit payment for these invoices.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but
Before someone comes and breaks our knees or something.
I think we have, we have to do it.
I'll make a motion to pay them reluctantly without fees.
Reluctantly second.
Okay.
This is something that never should happen.
No, it never should happen.
This is something that was flawed during the construction of the middle school. And I wish we could go back and recoup expenses for it.
Yep, me too. Me too. Or it would have been nice, at least if the guard before this guard recluded. But they were.
Yeah, it's- You know, and I think that was part of the issue we had with that basin, it went underwater.
Yeah.
You
Everybody forgot about it.
tell what the bottom looked like without watering it, and then. I'm not even sure that the plants would have made it.
No, they would have.
There was no topsoil. Gold in it.
Yeah, there should be. There is gold in there.
Yeah.
Taxpayer gold.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Full summer camp there and we can plant some for the kids.
yeah.
There's no fish in there, right?
Oh,
Geese.
Yeah, there was a geese, goose on the nest. Attacked us,
Oh.
or threatened to attack us.
You didn't realize how violent.
There you go.
yeah, there-
And you can see the catcher.
Pick her up.
Yeah, pick her up on the back.
Oh,
Oh,
Did
yeah.
you get that?
It's in.
Yeah.
It's in.
It's going out on the hind. Still got that NPDS, but we got that catcher.
There was a goose poop requirement would be pretty clear.
And the athletes appreciate it.
Yes, yes. And their doctors appreciate it.
Right.
Good. Summer projects.
Yeah, I just wanted to give everyone a quick update on the summer projects, and I reviewed this list with Craig briefly, but I'm working on having an electronic and a physical file for each one of these items. So at Marlboro, we have the boiler replacement.
Yep.
So those parts have actually started to arrive. We submitted the permit application to Marlboro Township. And we've also had L&I in because you need to go through them for a permit as well. So that, that process is underway. The good news is this doesn't have to be finished by the time the students come back. It just has to be finished by the time we need to switch over to the heating, because it's a 2-pipe system. So, this can go into,
Which could be September.
it could be, or it could be in December. We had to switch back in December last year.
Yes.
Yeah, to cooling, it was crazy. So, that the timeline is in our favor in that project for sure. We also have the standard classroom carpet removal down there, so 3 or 4 classrooms. Principal Stevens is choosing those classrooms as we speak. Same thing we do every year, the carpet, we'll empty the furniture, the carpet will come out, and they'll put the VCT down and it'll get waxed, and the carpet, or the furniture will go back. It just makes for a much more sanitary, clean environment. Tile instead of carpet.
Yep.
At the high school, we have the sidewalk replacement. Okay, so that's starting the week of June 12th. And it's a significant amount of sidewalk, essentially from the student parking lot all the way to the band lot.
Wow.
Not the whole run, but because there are sections that were acceptable, but there's, this section, and then you skip 20 feet, and then this section, and so that's scheduled. It will take place that week. We also have the basketball baskets.
Oh, good.
Replacement.
Nice.
That equipment had started coming in also.
Great.
And we've been contacted by the sub for BSN is actually gonna be doing the work. And I believe they're, that week of 6/12, everything's gonna
Busy.
be
Do
there.
you know who they're using though? So it's all right.
Yeah, I can look at it, I'll grab it for you after the meeting, but, we did get an email from them. We already talked about the softball field drainage project. Tennis court repair, I do have a second tennis court company coming out hopefully this week to just give us another opinion on the rubberized crack fill or that armor repair system. They're a company out of Schwenksville, so they're close. So that should happen this summer. But one project that we're lagging behind on, and I just don't know if this is gonna happen this summer, is there was money set aside to replace the ductwork in the shop.
Right.
Remember, we did the welding system, which is in operational, but on the other side, Dan Moyer's side, the actual clamped together ductwork we were looking to replace. And also put a spark arrestor system in. That project of all of these is lagging behind. That may have to be like a Christmas week project or something instead of the summer. And I don't know if that's gonna get advanced far enough to have it done in the summer.
Okay.
Over at 4-5, we have the admin roof replacement. That should be starting the week of June 12th also.
Oh, that's gonna be a big.
And yeah, there's gonna be 3 or 4 projects going on. I think. And the swings, we're gonna be adding a set of swings to the playground. And then at Hereford, we also have the playground renovations that remember they will likely lag into September.
Yeah.
Those are sort of, I have a whole different list for the staff that I kept in a Google sheet that they're aware of, and I shared out just things that either we didn't get, it could be anything from, painting or remember the trees in the courtyard at Hereford, we're gonna take down.
Yeah.
I want them to inspect all of the sensory swings that we have in our schools.
Makes sense.
We had a local school district that found one of their clamps was close to failing. So,
You can't have.
that goes around in our circles.
Yeah, that would never.
So we have that on the list for inspection this summer. There's it's pretty.
Pile.
Yeah,
Pile
There's
of
a really
projects.
significant
lots of that.
Nobody will have free time, that was the crowd saying.
Well, this is the time, right? This is
Yeah.
This is part of the schedule. We do have a pretty healthy summer crew coming in.
Good.
Which I'm pleased.
Do we
That's-
hire students?
Yeah.
Good job.
Sometimes college kids in between.
Yeah, but to your point though, this year we didn't have a single student working for us in custodial. And I spoke to one of the students. Dr. Carpenter, a student, she asked me a bunch of questions. I said, well, I have a question for you. That's why, and some of it is, the kids,
I hated it.
yeah, they don't like it.
Yeah, you got a bucket,
Right,
a washcloth, and a putty knife.
yeah.
The putty knife is a scrape the film off.
That's right.
Yep, and a little scrubby.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you could put headphones on and have mindless work.
We didn't.
Right.
And I was.
Take that mindless
We had a
work.
Walkman, that was about it.
I wouldn't put the biggest.
No.
You can smart out. You can go. They had guns.
Sure.
Didn't have. Didn't have places. No, they just go. All right, take the green. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
that's right.
Well, thank you, Doug, for all that stuff.
Yeah, so that's just sort of an update on those, and I'll do my best to get Greg.
You know you will, so.
Yeah.
Is there anything else? No, I guess. Anything else from the committee? Just.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah.
Thank
thank
you.
Doug.
Thank you, Doug.
What a miss.
Best of luck.
This is last official meeting with
Yeah. Last official ever.
I guess. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well,
Just
no.
anytime, let me know, Doug, if Dr. Zerby doesn't treat you right, I'll
Yeah.
take care of that. So,
Yeah, there you go.
take care.
Yep.
Thank you for coming, Dr. Farina.
Yeah, thank you. It's always valuable.
I get to see Dr. Zerby every month, but our superintendent.
Yeah.
There you go.
Keep them in mind, yeah.
With that, I entertain a motion to. adjourn.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Oh, my goodness.
Appreciate everyone's flexibility here in the school.
Yeah. Wow. It's right. Yes.
Here we go.
There we go. Okay. I gotta go. Thank you.